My name's Janet Wood and I'm the editor of Utility Week magazine. I'm here to talk to Terry Povell, Head of Utilities at EC Harris, a service provider working across UK water companies, about those companies' response to a challenging asset management period. It's been said that in this AMP period, and we're now in AMP5, running for the 5 years up to 2015, the water industry landscape is beginning to change. In particular, there's a perception that the focus is shifting towards operational expenditure. What's been your experience?
If you look back historically, since privatisation, what we've seen is probably in excess of £90 billion worth of investment in the replacement of capital assets. There's been lots of press in the early days of privatisation around the antiquated asset base that the privatised water companies inherited, 200-year-old Victorian sewers. Most of those are now in the process of being replaced. So the massive capital investment that we've seen over the last 20 years, we've now seen a massive improvement in the asset base. So now the move is to operation and maintenance of that asset base. The difference between CapEx and OpEx is that with the regulated model is that any savings that you make in CapEx will actually be reinvested to improve the asset base, which may well lead to longer term returns for the individual company. But any savings in OpEx go straight to the bottom line in terms of financial performance. The data and knowledge that we have in OpEx is nowhere near the quality that it had in CapEx. And there's a change in attitude that we need to build a bigger understanding about what costs are, where they're incurred and why they're incurred.
Water companies need to respond to a variety of challenges around operational efficiency. What would you say are the biggest issues that they're facing?
Cost reduction is one thing. Making it sustainable now and being able to carry it forward into the next price review and beyond is the challenge. It's quite easy to reduce cost. It's a bit more difficult to make them stick and make them be sustainable. A big part of the challenge is to actually be smart around cost reduction. We have to achieve cost reduction while maintaining, service quality. The new SIM mechanism, which was replacing OPA, is a lot more customer focused rather than output focused, and that will, I believe, will put a different emphasis on the whole aspect of value, risk and cost benefit analysis in terms of decisions that are made on both CapEx and OpEx. So it won't be more about just achieving the right output, it'll be doing the right things to make sure the customer's happy with it. A key challenge in that is understanding where those reductions might come from, getting full transparency around what your costs are, where they're being spent, how they're being spent and why they're being spent. In the operational side of water companies in itself is a big challenge. It's not an area where historically they've been strong in.
So once you start really looking at the data, you get better visibility of the whole process.
So I think that the data is there, but it may well not be, or it's unlikely to be in the format, in the structured format that it has around the CapEx side of it. Once you get it into that structured format, then you can facilitate benchmarking and then start looking at where those improvement areas are.
It's all about the numbers.
It's all about the numbers. There
are clearly inefficiencies that can be driven out, but what are the best opportunities for water companies to act, and how should they go about doing it?
I think what we've seen historically, and we look back at where companies have looked at reducing operational costs in particular, the main focus tends to be around headcount reduction, power, both in terms of consumption and prices paid, and chemicals, both in terms of consumption and prices paid. Those tend to be where the big areas of cost are when people look at operational reductions. But I think that the best opportunities that we've seen on some of the case studies that we've been involved in is a drive to actually do those simple things right in a consistent manner across the whole operational regime. Those simple things, if they're captured and rolled out across the business, can actually generate between 5 and 10% on their own.
How can they make the kind of dramatic step change in performance that Ofwat's demanding and move up the league tables?
I actually think that if you take the 15% over a 5-year period and spread that out, compound it on an annual basis, you're only looking at a 2 to 3% saving per annum. So I don't believe that any single event will actually generate enough efficiency to actually lift you up. I think that there are lots and lots of small things that need to take place. So I think what's needed, the big step change for me, would actually be an executive sponsorship of an efficiency initiative that's actually driven from the board cascaded right down into the business with the facility to feed back to the board at every level. If you've got 3,000 operatives, you need to get the buy-in from every one of those operatives as what the impact of what that change means for him as an individual or her as an individual and for the business overall. Productivity can be affected by the location of what I would call support facilities. Just simple things like location of mess rooms and toilet facilities, increasing the amount of downtime on sites and where assets are being run. I think a very simple example I would give that most people can relate to outside of the sector is the use of skips to dispose of waste and grit from treatment works. We looked at one site where the skips were actually being taken off site when they were only 50% full. If you can hold those skips on site and only replace them or take them off site when they're 75% full, that's a 30% improvement in efficiency around there. But on that one particular site, that was saving in excess of £30,000 a year.
How would that look in practice from a utility perspective?
This sector, more than any other sector, has three opposing elements to it. First is the financial. We've talked about the ownership and the pressures on finance from shareholders. Then you've got the environmental push from people like Drinking Water Inspectorate, Environment Agency. And thirdly, you've got the regulation, who doesn't want the water companies to spend lots and lots of money to satisfy shareholders and environment and end up increasing customer bills. To achieve a balance against those three is quite difficult because they do pull and push against each other. I think what I would like to see as a general theme across that is more of on any decisions that were made about assets, be it replacements, improvements or operations, that we see more cost-based cost-benefit analysis techniques being used, looking at risk and looking at value, and that's value to the business as value to the customer. The customers are the ones that use water on a day-to-day basis, and I think what we try to do in the sector is to make the usage of that water, the treatments of that water, the distribution of that water as efficient as we possibly can, so they can pay the lowest possible bills.
But there must be lessons that can be learned from other industries.
I would move away from the non-regulated areas and look more to the private sector. And by private sector, I mean that those sectors where product is the output and therefore it's the key. I think oil and gas are particularly good around man-hour efficiency and capturing data around productivity improvement. I think if you look at the level of planned versus reactive maintenance in the oil and gas sector, is probably for each pound that's spent on maintenance, probably 80 pence is on planned and 20 pence is on reactive. What that enables you to do, it enables you to organise your supply chain and your operating models more effectively because you know what you're likely to spend in the following year. If you flip that back into the water sector, generally what you're looking at is reactive spend of about 80% and planned spend only of 20, planned maintenance spend. So a lot of lessons to be learned about oil and gas around productivity, man-hour data capture, and also around planned and reactive maintenance. In my experience, it's the achievable of the simple things that make the sustainable impact, which is what we're looking for. I think the challenge is to make them achievable across a wider program of work and make those efficiencies stick so they can be carried forward now and into the next price review, to give the regulator confidence that we've got a better performing business which will reflect in a more positive and better PR14.
Terry Povell, thank you very much.
Thank you.